Hey folks, businesses are experimenting with AI agents and they're using them for tasks that carry higher and higher levels of risk. So how can you ensure that your agents actually act ethically and have values, and whose values do they have to begin with? So today we'll talk about how to teach agents ethical behavior. So let's jump right in. Hey, welcome to What's the Buzz, where leaders share how they have turned hype into outcome. Today we'll talk about how to teach AI agents ethical behavior, and who better to talk about it than someone who's actively working on AI ethics, Rebecca Bultsma. Hey, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Sure. So, kind of at the Chat GPT moment, I was one of the first people to start experimenting with Chat GPT, and I started using it all the time, pushing the limits, using every new AI tool that came out. And after a few months, I started having questions about who was behind the curtain, who was making decisions, where it was drawing information from. And I couldn't find a lot of people who could explain it to me outside of computer science people who I didn't necessarily understand. And so I started trying to help other people make sense of it while also enrolling in a master's program, one of the only ones in the world at the time, at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, that specifically focuses on data and artificial intelligence ethics. And so I've been fully immersed in AI ethics and still using and experimenting with all the tools. I think they're amazing. I think they're cool. I think it's an amazing time to be alive. But now I also have a very nuanced view of all the ways that this can go wrong and all of the risks that are underneath some of that shiny, bright surface.
Awesome. I love that perspective. Hey, I tried this out. I was curious. I wanted to learn more, and I think it just shows that how broad this space of AI is, and how curiosity helps us learn more about these things, and almost like Alice going down the rabbit hole and learning more and more in a positive way.
Absolutely. With a little Mad Hatter on the side, for sure.
Exactly. All right, wonderful. Hey, folks, if you're just joining the stream, drop a comment in the chat where you're joining us from. I'm always curious to see how global our audience is. And also, if you want to learn how you can turn technology hype into business outcomes, take a look at my book, The AI Leadership Handbook, on Amazon and anywhere you get your books and audiobooks. Now, Rebecca, I know we're both rushing out of meetings, rushing into the next meeting, so our time today is a little shorter than we had initially planned. That's why I want to jump straight into the topics that we discussed. And I feel for a number of years we've been talking about this concept of ethical AI, trustworthy AI, responsible AI. It's sort of evolved over the last 7, 8, 9 years, and I'm wondering, what are you seeing? What has changed from your perspective when we talk about all of these different concepts?
Well, we've been talking about responsible and ethical AI, obviously, for a long time because AI has been embedded in a lot of our workflows and our daily life in a lot of different ways. For example, algorithmic powering of social media, right? There was questions around teenagers using it, a teenager looking at maybe a post about an eating disorder, and then the artificial intelligence powering the algorithm, pushing thousands of those notifications on them. So we've been talking about AI ethics for a long time. What's changed, obviously, is this introduction of generative AI. And because it can kind of act like a human and do really human-y kind of things, it raises a ton of new ethical issues to the front of mind for most people that we haven't had to think about yet, or with this level of urgency. And so it's always been there in the background. I could give you 100 case studies of how AI ethics, or the lack thereof, was super problematic before generative AI, but now it's an even bigger deal just because the capabilities have expanded so quickly and there's so many more risks.
So now we take these models with the worldviews encoded, probably largely Western or US-based worldviews, and we put them into our tech stack. We put them into the most critical pieces of our infrastructure, whether it's dealing with customers or with employees or leaders. And getting coaching for employee conversations and whatnot. We're even adding one thing on top, and we say, hey, you do this autonomously or semi-autonomously now with agents. It feels like we haven't even really started at the foundational level, and yet many organizations are looking to push this.
Yeah.
And I'm an adjunct professor. I work with undergrad students, and one of the modules I teach is around ethics, and I feel it's such a broad and big topic, but it's also very, very hard to get your arms around.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard enough to teach humans to behave ethically. Now we want to do this with agents, or we need to do that with agents if they act on your behalf, if they make decisions, maybe optimize more for a business goal than like for the collective good. What are the new challenges that you're seeing there in things that leaders need to be aware of?
There's honestly so many. I highly discourage organizations from like embedding things like agents before their actual people have a really, really solid understanding of AI, generative AI in general, its capabilities, its limitations, the connected risks, because those are just amplified, obviously, once you bring in something like an agent. And you're totally right. There is this major risk of bias. We call it like a weird bias, is kind of an acronym. It's Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies are way heavily overrepresented. So that's its own kind of problem. But there's this risk already of relying on AI systems because, as you mentioned, they have an ethics system encoded into them that reflects the builders who built it and a flawed data system that it was trained on, the internet. And so the risk of us using it without awareness is huge, but us without having enough awareness to oversee an agent and make sure that it's aligned with our company values, there could be major reputational damage if it acts in a way that's contrary to your values. There's shopping agents now you can buy right from within ChatGPT, or a bunch of the major financial institutions in the world have come together and come up with a way that agents can pay other agents. So if I'm looking at a great pair of shoes and I tell my agent that as soon as they get below $300, it can just go buy it, use my account. And so there's obviously risks connected to that we don't fully understand. ChatGPT has released browsers and agents, but there's malicious actors out there who know very simply how to maybe hack these or redirect them to incorrect websites, and you end up sharing personal information with the wrong places. There's just so many unknowns with those kind of external agents. Obviously, within something like Microsoft Copilot, in an enclosed ecosystem that is more secure, there are some really amazing things you can do with agents. And that's the problem. Like, the word agent is so murky, right? Like, travel agent, well, it doesn't like come with you to do stuff, or like, it's a weird word, and it means lots of things in lots of different contexts, but you just don't want an AI system making decisions ever, in my opinion, because it can't explain how it arrived at those systems or those decisions in any sort of way that's explainable or defendable. And then when it goes wrong, who's accountable? It's not the agent. You can't blame the AI. It will be you. It will be your company. If it's bias, if it spends $10,000 on shoes instead of buying one pair, who do you blame? You can only blame yourself, which is why you really need to understand it and have really good control before you do this.
I think it's a really interesting time that we're in for so many reasons. First of all of these things are now possible. Some of them are still in their infancy, but you can see where this is going. To your point, shopping, financial transactions, automation built into your browser. So yes, I can see where this is going. Like I said, many of the things are pretty incredible. But then thinking about, what does that agent optimize for? Does it optimize for the provider's goals, which could be revenue maximization, or does it optimize for the customer's goals, which would probably be paying less or getting better service or faster shipping at no cost or what have you? So, and then what is ethical in that sense? Is it the win-win? Is it maximizing the greater good for everyone involved? Are you looking at more long-term relationships, customer lifetime value? Maybe I give a little more here, but then you buy more next time. These sort of things, and how do you even know how these agents decide? I think that's the big question for me now.
Huge.
Yeah. From your work now, working with leaders, working with organizations, advising them on ethics, things that they should keep in mind. How can you ensure that agents don't just optimize for reaching that goal, but also consider other aspects that a human would consider, that a regular business person would consider, thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead?
Honestly, it's tricky because as of right now, it's hard to know what's going on in the background of how an AI is working and how it's making decisions. One of the most interesting stories I've ever heard is, this was a few years ago when they were trying to teach image recognition to an AI system. They showed it thousands of pictures of wolves and dogs, and to teach it to learn the difference between a wolf and a dog.
Yeah.
And then when they tested it later, the only reason it knew what was a wolf and what was a dog is that the wolf had a snow in the picture. So even if you showed it a picture of a Frenchie and there was snow in the picture, it decided it was a wolf, which shows that we don't know how it's thinking in the background, and it may be very, very different than how we think it's thinking, in air quotes, when it makes a decision. And so I think it's super important that we take that into account. Obviously, it will get better, but a lot of it's going to depend on the very specific instructions and tasks that you provide, keeping things very narrow to start and very traceable so that you can understand where things go wrong, and start with really low stakes things. Obviously, with any AI use, start with things that are low stakes, right? Because low stakes hopefully mean very, very low consequences if it goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And the agents will get better and we'll have some of these questions answered, but we do need like audit trails and mechanisms because there isn't necessarily any government oversight over this right now, but you would need some internal company oversight for sure.
In a way, you might think that once things do happen, bad things happen, unintended consequences happen, that then regulation or broader changes are enforced in a sense, which is always kind of unfortunate in that sense. But I think this part about auditability, traceability, peeking into the black box, checking the logs, what is happening. Maybe not so much on an individual user level, but for those who are looking at bringing agents into the business, I think those are features that are so important because, like I said, at the end of the day, if something happens, you will want to trace what has actually happened and why, and not just you want to, you will eventually need to have some proof what has
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so what do you then recommend leaders do at this critical point in time when all vendors are shouting, we've got agents, build it on us or on our platform, come here, and you feel the pressure that you should be doing something because your friends on the golf course are doing something or your competitors are doing something? What do you need to do then?
Take a breath. Honestly, it's not like a race to the bottom right now. And there's new legislation that is coming in that may impact you. And I haven't done a deep dive into it yet, but some of the new laws that they introduced in California, for example, specifically target chatbots, and they're designed to protect teenagers and kids, but they also potentially impact anyone who has any sort of chatbot on their website and introduces new liability. If in any way, shape, or form it offers any sort of advice or emotional, like anything that crosses into that territory, suddenly it's governed by different laws. And there's other states who are introducing similar legislation. And you might just want to focus on getting your whole staff super, super trained on generative AI and working with things internally, like maybe Microsoft Copilot, working on internal agents before you start thinking about introducing things externally to the public, until we have a better understanding of what the legal landscape looks like, what the liability landscape looks like, and until we have a really good understanding. Wait for it to go horribly wrong for somebody else first, is my advice, because it will. Let's just see what happens. So my advice is to take a breath.
Sure. I think that's actually a really good advice. It's not as urgent or as imminent as it might seem when you read the news. And there's still enough time that you need to spend anyways learning and experimenting and seeing what works and what doesn't, and also the topic about start on internal use cases, in internal scenarios first, and cut your teeth there before you put something out in the open is a good one. I think it was in July, August timeframe. McDonald's was in the news. They had connected an agent to their HR backend system, so applicants would get information more quickly. And researchers actually found that they were able to hack the agent and steal the password, get access to, I think it was 6 million records of previous job applicants and all the kinds of things. So speaking about things that can go wrong, there are more of these examples certainly coming, and it's usually these moments in time when the risk is, okay, let's take a breath and let's see what we should really be doing. So yes,
agree.
Now, I said this one is going to be a short episode, and I know we're getting close to the end of the show. Rebecca, I was wondering if you can summarize the key 3 takeaways for our audience from today.
I think that my 3 key takeaways would be to invest some time understanding as much as you can about agents, how they work. Experiment with them on your own first before introducing them into your organization or mandating them into your company. Just experiment with accounts that you have in your personal email and your personal name to figure out how they work and where they fail. That would be number 1. Number 2, know that these are not foolproof. There's a lot of problems with them. You just brought up a good one with McDonald's. On a large scale and on a small scale, there are issues. And number 3, just take a breath. There's no rush. We're all figuring this out. Things are going to go wrong, but maybe just don't let it be you who is the trailblazer in things that are going wrong. Just sit back and observe and take a breath.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Rebecca, it's been a pleasure having you on the show and hearing your perspective on how we can teach agents ethical behavior. Folks, if you want to connect with Rebecca, you find her on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. See you next time for another episode of What's the Buzz. Bye-bye.